Hello, everyone. This is Petra Lohmeyer from Nevelle, and I am back again. So, what is it about today? Sorry that I wasn't there last week, but we are back today for a while at least. What I wanted to do, I actually do want to introduce a little bit of a change, and that change is this. So, I thought the whole win-win idea has kind of come over by now. If you don't know what we're talking about, it's about win-win situations between humans and the environment that also make a profit. And we've gone into the question, why do we want a profit to make it scalable and so on and so forth, and a lot of different examples in past podcasts, which are available still on the link below. So you can take a look at that to see different examples of how that could work, what other companies have done, how they have found win-win solutions. And we will always now put one of these examples at the back of the podcast. But I thought because a lot of these issues that we are having at the moment are much easier solved with AI and quantum computing, that we also go into these technologies a little bit, and not so much just as a caveat to those who have just trained me in some of these things. I am not going to divulge any kind of information that I got in these courses that is proprietary or that could harm the business. I'm certainly not going to try to teach people how to write proper prompts and rubrics for an AI company in Silicon Valley, which I'm learning right now. And because I am actually living this book and I am on a different course again, I don't know for how long. It may be short, it may be longer. I hope it's going to be longer. It's shaping up to be a very interesting project. In the meantime, I thought I could just teach people who don't really need this in a big company setting where they have to actually implement and introduce AI, or in their entrepreneurial setting, but just in the everyday world, who kind of feel left behind by this whole chat GPT thing, maybe seniors or people about to retire, or already retirees, or also people maybe in their 40s and 50s who don't really know yet what this whole chat GPT is about and all these other things that are there, and feel kind of left behind. And I just wanted to share a few things that I've done in the last few months, literally, and show you how I've used it and how I found it was really helpful. Because I had a discussion with an old friend of mine yesterday, actually, and she said she hated this whole AI thing and everything, but I'm not entirely sure that she actually realizes how easy and how much easier it could make her life. So I will show a few bits every time, and then also show a win-win example at the end for as long as I'm doing this. So the first thing that I wanted to show you is something that I've shown you before in a previous podcast, but I only showed it to you in the background. It wasn't necessarily about this whole AI thing. It was about the actual topic of what I was searching with AI. And I'll show you the screenshot now. So this is ChatGPT basically, and this is a prompt that I've put in. Initially, people are so concerned about writing prompts and how to write them properly and how to write them. Yeah, and there is some truth to it, that the more information you give the AI, the more chances it has to come to the right conclusion. And yes, you still have to check the answers every time and can't just rely on them, because, well, partly because there's always usually a human in the background who wrote this answer at some point, and then the answers of different humans were cross-referenced, or some AIs also search the internet and look on the internet, and not everything there is right. So you have to double check what you get back. You can even use different AIs. So I'm using ChatGPT now, but there's also Gemini, and then there's also DeepSeek, for example. There are different types of AIs for different kinds of jobs, and I'm just using ChatGPT because everybody knows it, so as the first prompt. But if you don't really need it for a company, like a big company purpose or something, but just in your private life, you don't have to make it so difficult. I mean, initially, I'm showing you now what I put here, which got me a really good result, and I'm showing you the result as well. And this is just literally, I literally just put, why is it important to remove CO2 from the atmosphere, and what is the science behind it? So that is basically almost like a normal Google search, right? But I put it into ChatGPT and I took a look what was coming out. And the reason why I put this is because somebody before who was a scientist, or who at least alleged he was a scientist, I can't really, I could never find a picture if he was actually the man that he said he was, but he told me all kinds of things about science and said he was, somebody who had had actually written a paper about it, and he told me all kinds of things that made me insecure. So I thought, okay, let's check the science behind it. And I put this into ChatGPT. And so it came up with all these answers. CO2 as a greenhouse gas. It is a greenhouse gas, meaning it absorbs and re-emits infrared radiation, heat from the Earth's surface, and all these other things. Human contribution by removing CO2 matters. The consequences of too much CO2. And all these are things that I have seen before. So this is not something that was a completely weird answer to me. These are things that I've seen before. I've just didn't remember them. So now I do, right? So, but then I wanted to go a little bit deeper into it, why this man had told me something else. So I basically, and the end, which is interesting, so this whole answer is just for this one prompt that it gave, right? So it gives me this whole answer, which I thought was really great. And then it asks me at the end, would you like me to explain how much CO2 we need to remove to meet global climate targets like the Paris Agreement? Well, that's a good idea. So I say, yes, please. And that's all I'm saying, right? So I'm basically having a chat, like I'm having a chat with a friend. Not very much different, because this is not me trying to train an AI at an AI company. This is just me having a chat with a friend, basically. And this is how this works. So it shows me all these thoughts for 30 seconds, basically. And so today's removals already removed, what's needed for 1.5 centigrades, and the role of tech in CDR inside that total, and so on, why it matters and stuff. Really interesting answer. So then I thought, okay, this still doesn't give me the answer why this other guy told me something else. So I asked it, I was recently told by a chemist who claims he wrote a paper about the atmosphere and that climate change was a lie because he knew that the atmosphere was not sequestering CO2. He also claimed that his colleagues at the Max Planck Institute, which is a big deal over here, said the same thing. Now, he may be wrong or influenced by the far right, because that is basically a few podcasts that he gave me to listen to. So I'm not saying that what he says is correct. Nevertheless, the theory is obviously out there. So what would you respond to that? And I did that also to check my own thinking, because I thought, okay, maybe I'm just, because I know that the internet is biased towards my bias and shows me what I want to see. So I wanted to basically check my thinking. So that is what I did. And I did this, I think like about 2 months ago, right? So it came back and said, well, that's really important and thoughtful question. Thanks for raising it. Skeptical claims like the one you describe come up often, sometimes even attributed to people with scientific grounds. It's good to unpack them carefully and compare them to what is actually known. So basically, he's saying, okay, fine, it's good that you asked that, and this is what I'm telling you. So the atmosphere itself does not sequester CO2. So that is right what this guy told me. It was misleading because it's the storage medium where excess CO2 accumulates. And I'm pretty sure that the guy knew that, but he also knew that I wasn't a scientist. So if he would tell me that, I would immediately think, so, well, then, CO2 is not a problem in the atmosphere, right? So you can actually use ChatGPT to double check something that is misleading information, because ChatGPT can then, if you ask the right questions, tell you why that is misleading information. So, and that was from a very open question, which is not what I would do in other contexts, in professional contexts, but in this context, it was perfect, because I just said, nevertheless, this theory is obviously out there. So what would you respond to that? Which is an open question, which in other as I said, in other contexts is not what you should be doing, but in this context works perfectly. And the good thing is you're not doing this for a job, you're not doing this for work. You can just test out what works. If you don't get the right response, then you just ask another question. So it's giving me all these answers on the claim that climate change is a lie and so on and so forth, and why such claims circulate, how to respond constructively. And that is really interesting because it also tells me how I could respond without this escalating into a fight, which I found really interesting in that response. So at the end, it asks me, would you like me to draft a polite but firm response you could use in conversation with someone making such claims? And I say, yes, please. And then it gives me the draft. So that was a really interesting experience for me also, because this was really not something where I was just looking for a little bit of information, but I was actually checking in how far I had a bias that was not appropriate, right? And it did confirm me, but it also gave me some background information and showed me why these claims are out there. And obviously, this is a win-win podcast, so I would be using an example like this, but I can also give you another example. For example, when I wanted to put right, I wanted to my CV to be rewritten. One of the problems with my CV is I've done some very specific things in my life, some very that go into very much depth, and hardly anybody out there knows what that is and understands the subject, which is derivatives in banking. And nobody understands what that is except for the people who do derivatives in banking. And that's the very, very few people who are in that field. It becomes much more important over here. In London, a lot of people know about it because it was all done in London. But now it becomes much more important here. But still, people don't know what it is. And no matter what I put on my CV, people can't tell what I'm actually doing, right? Which is a problem if I send a CV somewhere, because if they don't know what I'm doing, then they think that my experience isn't relevant, no matter how many things I've done, no matter how much I try to tailor it sometimes. So what I've done now a lot of times is I just uploaded my CV to ChatGPT, then uploaded the job description that I was given for the particular job, and then told ChatGPT, can you please write me a CV that uses the information on my CV but tailors it to the wording and all of that in the job application. And what I got back was actually quite perfect a lot of times. Sometimes I still had to tailor it because it put things in that I actually couldn't do, and then I had to take those out, or I had to add a little bit something in where it hadn't quite understood how this was the same thing as on the job application. But it saved me so much time, because if I had started to redraft my own CV by hand, it would have taken so much longer, right? And sometimes if you don't really fit into a cookie cutter mold over here, especially in Germany, then people will just discard you. It doesn't matter how qualified you are. It doesn't matter how much experience you have. It doesn't matter how much you could help them. It doesn't matter how much you've proven that you're flexible and that you can adjust to jobs. If you're not exactly what they are used to seeing, then they will discard you. So it is really important and you don't know what they usually see, right? You just have your own CV. You have the CV that you've seen from a few other people, but you haven't seen 100,000 CVs that other people have submitted. So this is actually really helpful because ChatGPT knows that. GPT has seen a lot of different resumes and different CVs from different people, and it adjusts the wording to what it is used to. That also means that keywords and key phrases that certain AIs that these companies use will also be hit, right? I mean, I don't know how far it works for other people, but it is a quite interesting way to rewrite the resume in a much shorter period of time. And there's a lot of other things where you can use it too. So I just showed you these two because I thought that they were interesting for people who are looking for a job, for example, or for people who just want to know what's going on with the politics as well right now, and who want to get a little bit of a background and double check their own thinking. And these are two really good examples, I thought. So the win-win bit for today Win-win bid for today. Well, I thought this time I'm going to be using this bit on Vattenfall. I know this will be controversial for some people, and initially I wasn't entirely sure what I thought about it either, because it is offshore wind farms, and I heard about all these birds being killed by offshore wind farms. But a few weeks ago, I was at a local meeting from the NABU. NABU is the organization, the charity that deals with birds in Germany and that protects birds in Germany. And they actually told me that there is new science out there that these wind farms are actually not harming birds all that much. Apparently, there is a scientific study that I think there was only one collision of a bird, so in I don't know how much time it was, but it was a significant amount of time. So and people didn't know before because of course if birds in outside in fall into the ocean, you wouldn't see them, you wouldn't find them, right? So I'm not sure what the real science is on that, and somebody you would have to make your own up your own mind. But these wind farms exist. So it whether this is good or bad, they are there. And if they exist anyway, then you can just as well use them for something good. And that is what Vattenfall is apparently doing. Growing seaweed and cultivating mussels could become as natural as producing fossil-free electricity at offshore farms. I'm reading here. And that's what researchers are testing at two of Vattenfall's offshore wind farms, Kriegers Flak and Baltic Sea and Vesterhav Syd in the Danish North Sea. I don't know if I'm actually really producing that right. I thought it was really interesting why it matters. WindSea could shape how we think about offshore infrastructure. Not only is the project showing that multi-use of infrastructure and space is possible, it's also yielding insight into ecological impacts, practical challenges, and economic opportunities of combining energy and food production with new licensing rules demanding environmental accountability. This kind of integrated thinking might become the norm. If it becomes the norm in those particular projects, it might become the norm in other projects as well. So I thought this was really interesting because seaweed is obviously really good for sequestering CO2. I think there the word sequestering is actually the right word, but it takes CO2 out of the atmosphere, basically, right? It puts it into itself or puts it into the ground, whatever it does, it's good. I'm not going to tell you the exact science, but I've read it, everywhere that it's good. And also, it's really healthy. And they apparently make chips out of it. So Samuel L. Jackson is producing these ads at the moment, and apparently he used to study biology, marine biology. So this is really interesting, and I thought that I will show you this, and you can take a look at this post on the internet. As again, these posts you can find on my LinkedIn page. I post something or several things almost every day that are win-win situations between humans and the environment. And today I actually saw something about clothing because I think last year I visited one of the talks from VD, from Antje van Davids. Antje van Davids used to be in my class basically at high school. And she's the CEO of VD, which is a clothing company in Germany. And there was the question of recyclability of clothes and what to use instead of cotton, for example, which is very intensive in terms of farming methods. So they are now using the leftovers of pineapple. And I thought that was really interesting because usually that is just burnt or that is just thrown away. And they're using that. And apparently some very big companies are already interested in this. If I take a look here, maybe if I go back, I can take a look. So this is from one of those people that I usually follow as well. And Nike, H&M, and Hugo Boss want in. So this was also an interesting thing that I've seen today. So I hope this was interesting to you as well. And I see you again, hopefully next week.